Hello, good day everyone. What we're going to be doing today is algebraic factorization, and this is just a simple introduction so you'd understand exactly what goes on during factorization. So a couple of assumptions that we have for this is that you know how to perform algebraic operations such as addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. You know what the distributive law is and how it applies to algebra. You understand that each algebraic factor represents a number, and what exactly is factorization? Factorization is just simplification of an algebraic expression by extracting the highest common factor between the terms of the expression. So, say for example, I have something like xy, and this is not multiple terms, this is just simply one term here. If I want to write the factors of this, I would just simply see that it is x and y. And if I multiply xy, I would be able to get the result xy. So what is the highest common factor? It's obvious to state, but highest common factor is the highest common factor that could be extracted between multiple terms. And say for example I have something like 2x and x squared. The highest common factor that I can see there between this 2x and the x squared is just simply a factor of x. And when I extract this x from it, what I would remain with inside of my brackets when I solve it, and you would see what I'm talking about later on, if I take my 2x and I divide it by x, I would see that I have x here. And if I take my x squared and I divide it by x, what I would see here is that all I remain here with is x. So you see an x here, 2 here, and notice that the 2 and the x have nothing in common anymore that we can remove. Alright, so how do you factorize an expression? First, you take each term of the expression and identify what you think is the highest common factor. You then divide each term of the expression by this HCF, and then you write the answer in the following format. You place the HCF first and then open a parenthesis, or in other words just a regular bracket, and you place the result of each term's division and then close the parenthesis off. Now this seems a little bit vague, but when you do an example like in the next two, you would see what I'm talking about. So let's first try and understand what's happening during factorization with numbers first, since it's easier to visualize rather than algebra terms. So imagine that you have two numbers 4 and 8, which will give you 12. That's normal mathematics. Now if I decided that what I want to do first is extract factors, now you don't have to go through this with numbers, but it's easier to see with numbers rather than algebra. So let's say we have two numbers 4 and 8. We can see that this can be broken up into products of 4 multiplied by 1 and 4 multiplied by 2. Notice now I have a factor 4 here and a factor 4 here that is in common. So what I say is I can take that factor outside of here, and then I simply put in whatever remains inside of the bracket. So I open my bracket, my parenthesis, and I'm seeing that 1 remains here, so I put my 1 value over here inside the bracket. And I'm seeing also a positive 2, so I'm taking that positive 2 and putting it inside of here. Notice that 1 plus 2 is equal to 3, and then from that 3 I would be able to say 4 3s when giving me 12. Alright, so let's look at some algebraic terms now to see some examples of it. So the first example is this one. We see in 2x minus 8x, and what I'm going to do first is I'm going to identify what the factors possibly could be. Now I obviously seeing a 2 here and I'm seeing 8 here, and I'm saying okay, then I know that 2 and 8, there are multiples of 2 inside of 8. So I'm saying okay, I'll divide first by 2. So I take my 2x cubed and I divide by a value of 2, and what I'm seeing is that when I divide by this value of 2, I'm remaining with x cubed. And when I do the same thing for my 8x, I am seeing that when I divide by 2, what I remain with is just simply 4x. Now when I compare these values here and this value here, I am seeing that there is still a common factor of x. So I'm saying okay, I can take my results now, my x cubed, and divide that by x, and I will get a result of x squared. And then I can simply take my value of 4x divided by x, and I will get a value of 4. Notice overall what I actually divided by. I divided by a coefficient of x, and I divided by 2. So I take my 2x and I place it outside of my parenthesis. I open my parenthesis, and my result after all divisions was x squared, so I put that here. Now I made a mistake here. I had a negative 8x. I'm taking the value inclusive of whatever it is here. So I'm taking a negative 8x and I'm dividing it by a 2 and I'm getting a negative 4x. And over here it's a negative 4x divided by x to leave me with negative 4. So that's why I take a negative 4 here and I put it inside of the parenthesis here. And I close off the parenthesis and I'm done. For next example, we see in that 3x cubed y minus 9x cubed 9x cubed y cubed. Now if I look at this here, I can always take out everything that I see in common right away. And if I watch this, I'm seeing here that 3 is in common with the 9 factors. X cubed is in common here. But what I notice is I have a y and a y cubed. So therefore I take the value of y instead of the y cubed, and I say that my highest common factor would be 3x cubed y. So first I take my 3x cubed y and I divide by 3x cubed y, and I see what remains to me is 1. So notice again, I take in my HCF and I'm putting it here. I am opening a parenthesis and I'm placing the result of the remainder inside of here. Next coefficient here is a negative 9x cubed y cubed. So negative 9x cubed y cubed divided by 3x cubed y would give me a result of 3 cancels with this to give me negative 3. X cubed cancels with x cubed to give me 1. And y cancels with y cubed to give me y squared. Notice that I deal with them in parts. Numbers first, then common coefficients, and I simply subtract powers away from them. So I get here that negative 3y squared, and this here is the answer that I get. So if anything is unclear for you and you have any questions for me, you can ask me by messaging me at curb.tutor@gmail.com, or you can leave a message with the video, or you can ask your course teacher for any help that you may require. Thank you very much.